my name is Jocelyn Fry. I am your Libertarian Party of Iowa District 3 rep. And I decided to come out and make a visit to Potawatomi County because I'd never been out here before. And we originally didn't have a plan. Marco and I were just going to come out and figure out what to do. Well, then it turned out that I needed to be in Omaha. So Iowa is a co-chair for an event called the Unconvention, which is going to take place Memorial Day weekend next year. It's a 3-day event with speakers and educational opportunities, and my part in it is to be the chair of a family track committee. So we're going to have a whole separate run of family events and speakers and entertainers. So we decided I would come and talk. We would make it worthwhile to make it a double check. Our caucuses are coming up in February, and we thought we would do a caucus prep. We've never done that as a party. We've never had a caucus in primary. But those preparations are not actually in place yet. So I can't teach you how to do caucusing yet. The state party is still working on that. So what can we do to make this event interesting now that I can't actually do caucus prep? So we thought we'd have some of our candidates come and speak and maybe hold a debate. So that's what we're doing today, and I want to thank you all for being here. The first speaker we'd like to have come up is Jules Offenbach. She is running for Secretary of State. So give her a chance. Thanks.
Give it up for Jocelyn. She's done a lot of work. Hi, I'm Jules Offenbach. I am a Libertarian candidate for Iowa Secretary of State. I grew up in Russia, and that's where I learned to dislike large government. With large government means it's a powerful government, and a powerful government means you don't have rights. And coming to this country, I learned that there are two options. There's a Republican option and there's a Democratic option. And those two options, I never could decide which one is better because I didn't like choosing between two evils. When you choose between two evils, you're ultimately choosing evil. I've always been very fiscally conservative, and I've always been socially liberal. I always thought that other people's business is not my business. And I hated choosing between the two parties. Until 2012, Mr. Gary Johnson came on to Jon Stewart's program, The Daily Show, and spoke about the Libertarian Party. And that's when I discovered that I no longer need to choose, and that was a fantastic feeling. I am running for Secretary of State because I have computer background. My undergrad is computer science. I spent 10 years in networking and security, and then I became a lawyer. And I specialize in business and business litigation. And there's one thing that I can tell you that the state of Iowa is lagging as a Secretary of State's office, and it is computerized election process and computerized business registration. I register about 20 businesses a year at minimum. I physically cannot be there registering those businesses as a Secretary of State, and I cannot spend those days sitting in that office and asking them to register them and waiting for them. So I do it electronically. I file my businesses that I represent electronically. It takes about 3 to 6 weeks on a good day to register a business electronically. Why? It's all database. Why is it taking so long? I have the knowledge and I have the skills to implement the right program because that's what I'm used to do. Being a lawyer also puts me in an interesting position where I may not know all the laws, but I most certainly can look them up, and I most certainly can figure them out. I don't need a training to figure out the election laws. I can just read them. We recently had a candidate challenged by the Republican Party for a special convention, and I'll tell you the truth, until then I never looked at the election laws before. I read chapter 32, I believe, and went and fought the challenge and won. That's what I do. I'm a trial lawyer. I read the laws, I apply them to the situation, and I win most of the time. And that's why I'm running for Secretary of State. Thank you.
So next up, we have our congressional candidate, Brian Jack.
Just give me a second to zoom the cameras out, because I'm a little bit taller than you ladies, so. I'll keep this brief. My name's Brian Jack Holder. I'm a lifelong resident here at Council Bluffs, Iowa, and I've run for Congress in 2014. And last year I joined the Libertarian Party to advocate for liberty and justice for all of us. I'm running again next year. We've got a primary now that we're a major party in Iowa. And I want to test the theory out that we're all equal before the law, because I've been excluded from debates on Iowa Public Television in 2014 and 2016, and my fellow libertarians have been excluded from these debates also in the past. So we're going to see that hopefully we'll get in the debates, but we've got Jules here as an attorney, and if we have to file a lawsuit to get in the debates, we will do that. So you have a question?
Can we sue the entities that denied us access to the debates in the past for damages on those previous occasions?
Well, the difficulty with that is that if the suit was not brought back then to try and prove damages, you have to have standing before the court. And what the opponents of our position would say is that the election is already over. So if you want to have standing, you're going to have to sue for the debates that are going to happen in the future. But if they exclude us from the debate, sure, we could ask for monetary damages. Myself, I wouldn't ask for any monetary damages. I just want to have equal amount of time on the debate stage and an equal opportunity to be heard. So, if anyone wants to know about me or my campaign, my website is Holder for Iowa. That's HOLDERFOR Iowa.com. I'm on Facebook, and I have a YouTube channel where I film public meetings, I film high school sporting events, concerts, and also I film our elected officials every chance I get to hold them accountable, because I found that they won't hold themselves accountable, and we can't depend upon the mainstream media to do it. So us libertarians, us in the liberty movement, it's time for us to bring out our cameras, and I suggest that, unlike the Republicans who talk about Second Amendment remedies, I'm willing to exercise my First Amendment remedies. So thank you.
So now we're ready for the exciting part, the part we've been waiting for, which is the debate between our gubernatorial candidates, Jake Porter and Marco Battaglia. But before we do that, I want to point out that we have petitions, forms in the back. All of our candidates would greatly appreciate your signatures on those forms. So I am going to invite our moderator, Demarest, to take over. Thanks.
Welcome everyone to the inaugural Iowa gubernatorial debate featuring two stalwart Iowans. And by the way, Jake and Marco, can you join me up here? As you know, the Libertarian Party of Iowa achieved major party status as a result of Gary Johnson getting roughly 4% of the presidential vote last November. Major party status was formalized earlier this year by the person that Jules is running against, the Iowa Secretary of State. And so the Libertarian Party of Iowa will be participating in primaries for the first time in 2018. Today's inaugural Libertarian gubernatorial debate is indeed a historic event to be celebrated by Iowa Libertarians. Marco and Jake have agreed to the following innovative debate format. So they will choose among themselves who will lead off, and we flip a coin, and so Marco will get the first opportunity to speak. After that, we'll alternate on subsequent questions. Both candidates have agreed to keep their answers concise, so we don't have to use a timer. Members of the audience are invited to submit written, signed questions to be reviewed by the moderator. And after both candidates introduce themselves, several questions will be posed to each candidate that have been submitted via Facebook. Thank you, Jocelyn, for getting those questions. Each candidate has prepared 3 questions to be asked to the other candidate, and this is the innovative part that we're taking a shot at. And the moderator will pose the first 2 of these 3 questions to each candidate, and then the third question will be posed by the candidates directly to each other. The moderator will review written, signed questions submitted from the audience, select and pose the first 2 questions directly to the candidates. A member of the audience may be invited to pose the third question directly to the candidates. So be sure and submit your written questions, and be sure and sign them so I know who to call on for at least one of the questions. And you'll all have a blank sheet of paper. I expect a flood of questions to come up here and make them challenging. To conclude the debate, the moderator will ask each candidate to summarize their gubernatorial candidacy. The goal of this friendly debate is not to trip up the candidates, but rather to provide both participants a forum to address issues that are important to both the audience and the candidates that often isn't taken into account in other debate formats. We want to make sure that the candidates get to address questions that are important to them. Okay, let's get started. Marco, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the audience why you're running for governor of Iowa.
Sure. Marco Battaglia, and I was born and raised and educated in Des Moines and Cedar Falls, Iowa, and was a media major. So I think early on I saw political issues from the whole spectrum and kind of had my own decisions about what was someone just telling the story without embellishing it or slanting it to a certain side. And what really got me interested was seeing how the party was advancing and seeing how the different people that we had maybe were considering to have run. And it just played out. Growing up, I saw these politicians that would go and talk to one group of Iowans, and they would say one thing, and then they'd move on to another group and say another. And I got really tired of it and really removed from it for a long time until I found the Libertarian Party. And I see this disturbing trend of people that are running for governor nationwide that have a lot of their own business interests in mind, I feel, and they're wealthier and wealthier candidates. And then they get out-of-state money from wealthier and wealthier people with their own agendas. And I want to work against that. I want to give Iowans a voice on the ballot that is not contributing to that trend. And I think I had a good idea for a platform that was strong, and that's why I decided to throw my name in for consideration.
Jake, same question. And by the way, if you two want to use the podium, feel free.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank want to thank Dave for moderating this. It was very generous of him with his time to do this. I am honored to have him. He is an LNC Libertarian National Committee representative. He has a job that no one wants, that's for sure. I certainly don't want it. So I'm glad that he did that. I want to thank everyone for coming out here. I want to thank Jules Offenbach for running for Secretary of State and Brian Mulder for running for Congress. So I'm going to start a little bit about myself. So my name is Jake Porter, and I am running for governor. My history in the party has went back several years. My history in the Libertarian Party of Iowa has went back to 2006. So I'm a longtime libertarian. I've seen strategies that work, strategies that don't work. And I've also ran for office a couple of times before, so I have name recognition across the state of Iowa. I've got a base of support that I can use that will help us maintain our major party status. Major party status that we've got is important. We have to maintain that in this next election, or it's going to be it's going to be a waste. That's what I plan to do. So I originally announced that I was going to run for governor back in 2016, and then we got major party status with Gary Johnson. So I left for a while, took over as interim executive director of the Libertarian Party of Iowa, and then we did not have a candidate. This was back around July. I decided to step back in. We have had a tremendous amount of support that has shown up. We've been on TV, radio, newspapers across the state. Just a couple days ago, I had another op-ed that was published. We've done 2 candidate forums with the other candidates for governor. We're going to do a third here in a couple of weeks. And I think that's definitely what we need to do. Now, why I'm running for the issues, I'm concerned about the state budget that we have. We are in a budget crisis. Rape kits in Iowa are not being tested because we are in a budget crisis. The state is not allocating money to that. The state is allocating money to waste, to pet projects. The state taxes you more, the government grows, and you're told you can do less. We have people that have served their time and paid for their crime in this state that will never get their voting rights restored. You know, fewer than a couple hundred out of 25,000 people have had those voting rights restored in the past few years. That's wrong. It's also wrong that sick children cannot get their medication. And there's a lot of things that we're going to go through that budget line by line that I plan to do that will resolve these issues. And, you know, we're going to be, I plan to be a governor for all Iowans. We have a lot of juvenile attacks being slung back and forth by other candidates, but that's not going to help. We have to reach across the party lines to everyone, people that are apathetic, people that don't vote, and explain to them what the state is doing, and then come work together to find solutions. So that is why I'm running. A little bit about me.
Thank you, Jake. And it's your first step for the first of the Facebook questions. So what is the most important change that you would make to stimulate the economy and encourage job growth?
I think the first thing we got to do is to take a look at, I was talking about just a minute ago, the budget. The budget is in crisis. We give corporate welfare to Iowa's biggest companies. We have the research activities tax credit. There are companies in Iowa, large corporations that don't pay taxes, but the government gets them a welfare check. These companies literally write the regulations that put small business out of business. You know, in the last census, 77 of 99 counties lost population. They lost population because of overtaxation, property taxes, overregulation, small business moving out of business, out of the state because they can't afford to do business in the state, and we raised the taxes on the poorest Iowans, right? They're talking about raising the state sales tax now to fund, I don't exactly know what it is, probably to balance their budget that they can't balance. They borrow from emergency funds. This is all very important, and what it does eventually is it passes the tax bill onto the smallest counties. Because what they're doing is the state government's no longer offering these services. The government's still doing them, they're just doing it at the county and local level. So your taxes are not going to go down if somebody's still doing this. They're just passing the tax burden down to the smallest counties. Your property tax is going to go up, these smaller counties are going to continue to die. So the first thing we need to do is we need to look at the budget, go through there, balance the budget, quit borrowing from the emergency fund, and then we go through, we cut any program that's not necessary, any pet projects, and we lower taxes and we cut regulations on businesses that are unnecessary.
Thank you, Jake. Marco, same question. What is the most important change you would like to make to stimulate the economy and encourage job growth?
I think that the current way that the Iowa government is attempting to meddle with the economy is actually pretty much across the board harmful to growth, harmful to stimulate innovative new businesses. They're keeping markets in place. They're upholding markets that people are really starting to move beyond. I think we need to look to the cities, more rural cities and bigger cities in Iowa that are actually growing their population, and they're doing this by encouraging innovative new businesses. They're basically working towards a sound monetary policy across the board is really going to help everyone that's trying to start up a business in Iowa. Basically reducing taxation across the board, and I think right now we spend a lot of money training Iowans to do jobs, and they get highly skilled, but then they move to other states because they're not well thought out government policies. We're training them, to go, some case, move to other countries, and I think if we can actually focus the money we're already spending on training new people, new skills, new jobs, for jobs that Iowa's going to need in the next 50 years. Things like innovative new agricultural jobs, more actual skills as opposed to creating more bureaucrats. I think that basically a lot of the core of what we need is in place. It's just changing how we spend that money. Maybe we can work smarter and spend less money and work to keep Iowans trained for jobs that we're going to actually need them to do in the next 50 to 100 years.
Thank you, Marco. Marco, as governor, what would be your #1 priority?
I think what we really need is, I'm really going to focus on working to get Iowa towards zero income tax. And I think by doing that, you have a comprehensive tax reform plan, and you can really address the things that are really pressing to Iowans across the board in the way that you present the budget, the way that you present a future tax plan. You can tie all of it to the things that we're talking about every day: mental health funding, tie it to soil and water conservation. And I think you can really appeal these to both sides here by being, a third kind of disinterested party from the agenda of the other parties and worrying more about what the citizens want. I think by working that all into a tax plan that appeals to Iowans across the board, not pandering to left or right or wealthier or less, less wealthy people. I think you start with that and you really touch on the issues that we're talking about every day in Iowa right now, and how that's going to explain to people how that's going to tie to how you getting us to no income tax is going to tie to these issues like mental health funding and soil and water conservation.
Thank you, Marco. Jake, as governor, what would be your #1 priority?
I agree with Marco on that. The budget is my #1 priority. If we don't get our fiscal house in order, we're going to end up in the same shape as Illinois, California, maybe a couple decades away, but ultimately that's where we're headed. We're headed to disastrous things are happening now. Roads and bridges are crumbling across the state. We look at our education standards have fallen. We look at anything else with it, whether it be rape kits not being tested, highway patrolmen not being able to respond to accidents because That's the funding that's been cut. Pet projects have not been cut. We look at the budget, it grows. Pet projects seem to never get cut. The services that would be more essential are the first things that get cut. Domestic violence shelters, mental health facilities, the things that ultimately add more to the budget in another area. Now, Marco mentions, eliminating the income tax. We can eliminate the income tax or sales tax, but you don't want to do that in a reckless way like Kansas has tried with some of their policies. You don't decide that you're going to just eliminate one and increase the other to pay for it. I think Kansas had tried to eliminate the state income tax by increasing the sales tax. That's dangerous. It's a tax on the poorest Iowans at that point if you were to try it, especially if you're not cutting government. Because you end up taxing the poorest people that are going to not be able to make it. You're going to spend more in welfare whenever you do that, or you're going to drive people out of the state where they can't make it, they can't find work here, they're going to leave. We see a flock of people coming in from Illinois now because of their failed policies. We've got the same failed policies that are ultimately leading us in the same place. We're borrowing from our emergency fund hundreds of millions of dollars a year. That emergency fund only lasts as long as there's an emergency fund left. So if we don't, and they'll try to blame it, they'll say it's a bad farm year. Well, the problem is not a bad farm year, it's you've spent more money than you took in. They can't even pay their tax refunds on time because they don't have the money in the treasury, then they lie to you about it. That is immoral, it is unethical, and it needs to be put an end to, but our government should be honest about where the money's going. We should look through that budget line by line. Anything that does not belong should be eliminated. Anything that is a pet project should be eliminated, and things should be made more efficient. Your tax dollars should be spent very efficiently. We should not be giving welfare to large corporations while putting you with the tax bill.
Thank you, Jake. Jake, how would you change the office of governor, such as compensation, benefits, self-term limiting, changes that would benefit the people of Iowa?
You know, if I wanted to break Governor Branstad's record, I would have to serve for quite a few years. So I think I'll term limit myself before that. I think 3 terms is probably good. 4 years, 3 terms, that's probably enough for anyone to get anything they need done. One thing I would look at doing is potentially phasing out, eliminating the lieutenant governor position. That would be a cost savings. All the lieutenant governor position is being used for right now is to go around and do photo ops across the state of Iowa. I don't think we probably really need that. And it just propels somebody else to become a career politician and run for office. That's something I would look at doing. There are ways that you could, it used to, I think, be written in the Constitution, many states that don't have, like the Secretary of State, Offenbach, she could, if something happened to me, she could take over after that. That's one thing. We could also look, does the governor really need a chef at Terrace Hill? Does the governor really need to live at Terrace Hill? That's something we'd also look at. So the office of the governor, it's a pretty small thing as far as the grand scope of what the budget is. There are definitely things we could do to revise that. But I think that's kind of where you start. You look at all the benefits like the chef at Terrace Hill, we really need that. You look at things in there that you could cut within the administrative services, combining the stuff that the governor and lieutenant governor does now, and then potentially eliminating some of that.
Thank you, Jake. You're up first on the next one.
Do I answer that same question?
Oh, yes, you get an opportunity. So, as governor, how would you change the office of governor, such as compensation, benefits, and self-term limiting, to benefit all people of Iowa?
In regards to term limits, I can tell you that I will lead by example. I'm not a career politician, and I don't plan on making a living off of this. Don't plan on being in government in 10, 20 years. I think I can do a lot in the, 4 years is a lot of time. I think that first budget is a big way to get things started off right. And I would not be opposed to making less money, investing money into the state. I think we should have the same benefits as the citizens of Iowa. I really don't think there's any good reason for people that are going to be deciding medical issues, healthcare, for Iowans to not have to experience what everyone else has to experience, not have to participate in the same markets as everyone else. I'm really fair game to a lot of changes in terms of our comforts as, we're supposed to be public servants. And I know two things I would add. I would add a candidate, I would add a governor at that desk that cares about the Iowa Constitution and the whole Bill of Rights. And I don't think we've had that in 50, 100 years maybe.
Marco, why is a Libertarian a better choice for governor of Iowa?
At this time, being the newly recognized major party, breaking the two-party system, you get a lot of questions from people that are used to the same old, used from Democrats and Republicans especially. Most of the other people are really excited. Everywhere I've gone around Iowa, there's a lot of excited people that we now have a third major party. But I think the benefit of having a libertarian-minded governor in Iowa is going to be that we really don't have, we're not tied to these long-term pet projects from the Republicans or the Democrats. We're not beholden to their donors. We have no preference. We're looking at good legislation that can get to our desk. We're not saying, oh, we really want Democrats to succeed, or we really want Republicans to succeed, or we want this guy to replace us. I mean, we're actually getting to start with a clean slate in terms of, we can show people that if we don't go down these roads that the other parties have gone down in terms of cronyism and just accepting more and more, for lack of a better word, bribes from big name companies and people in Iowa, that we can really do something different. And I think we can help give independents a voice, and that's the biggest political affiliation in Iowa right now. I think that we're going to be welcome to other parties that want to work just as hard as we did to get ballot access, to get a chance to debate. And we're going to be completely open to them because we just experienced, a huge fight to just get to where we're at. And yeah, I really think we're able to work with anybody that's elected. Doesn't matter where they're coming from.
Thank you, Marco. Jake, why is the Libertarian a better choice for governor of Iowa?
Not only is Libertarian a better choice for governor of Iowa, it is the only choice for governor of Iowa. Unless you like what you're seeing now, do you really like this? Do you like the fact that rape kits aren't getting tested? Do you like the fact that the state overspends its money, can't pay your tax refunds on time, fights like little children? Do you like that? This is turning into a war film. Boris Karloff could play Kim Reynolds, This is not what we want. It is not working out. The Democrats and Republicans, they both grow government. They both take away your civil liberties. They both disenfranchise people. They both give money to big corporations. They both take bribes. We need a party that wants to get the government out of your bedroom, out of your billfold, out of your gun cabinet. And that's the kind of governor that we need. That's the kind of Libertarian Party that minds its own business. The kind of party that believes that you know best what to do with your own body. That as long as you're not hurting anyone else, that you have the right to do what you choose. You have the right to spend your money as you see fit. You have the right to live your life as you see fit, so long as you're not harming anyone else. And that doesn't matter what some busybody or bureaucrat in Des Moines thinks. So that is why the Libertarians are the only rational and sane choice you have in Iowa. And America, too.
Thank you, Jake. Now we get into questions that contrast the two candidates. And the first one comes from Facebook. So, Jake, how would you compare yourself to Marco?
I like Marco. Marco's been a longtime friend of mine. Marco even said on Simon Conway that he would take a bullet for me. I would also take a bullet for him. Trust me on that. By having this primary, we're having a debate. We do disagree on some issues. That's good. We are now going to have a primary that's going to bring people into the party. I think that, it's not so much, there's a style difference between us. You can decide which one you like best. There's a marketing difference. I think that I've got the experience. I think I've got the name recognition. I think that I've ran for Secretary of State twice, both times receiving over 33,000 votes. I think I can do that again. That would definitely keep us the major party status. But as far, if he gets the nomination, I will definitely support him. I guarantee that.
Thank you, Jake. Marco, how would you contrast yourself with Jake?
You did mention an appearance on Simon Conway, and Simon Conway said he would not take a bullet for you.
Yes, I did not like that. I told him he was off my security detail. You can be on it now.
Yeah, I have experience. I've been a bouncer and door guy and security, so we can cut that from my budget too. I don't think I need any of those things. And if they kidnap me and we don't have a lieutenant governor, the Secretary of State can just take over. You can forget about me. And but really, one thing that stood out to me going around the state is Jake has presented a plan to start by watering down, taking away the sales tax. And I really think that the income tax is the way to start. I think we have examples of states that are doing really well that have zero income tax. I think, and they have fine, top-notch, world-renowned education. They have quality roads. They have great public services, and they pay zero income tax. So I think that's where you start, and I think that's how you can get Republicans and Democrats to come together to start with the income tax, as opposed to starting, obviously we both want to reduce taxation, reduce the tax burden on Iowans across the board. We just have a different approach on how we're going to get there. I think another big difference is we have different types of name recognition, different types of background. I've been in blue collar and white collar work. I've worked with the press. I think I can relate to what most Iowans are doing for work. I've done it and been successful, raised a family doing it. And I think I can really relate. I've been in banking, insurance, factory work, and just keep moving up. And I've seen people that are doing great citizens, doing great things in all those jobs. And I think I can relate, to the average Iowan.
Thank you, Marco. Now we get into the questions that are actually prepared by the candidates to ask to each other. I will ask the first two, and then the third one you get to ask directly. So, Marco, actually this is to Jake. So, from Marco, how would you persuade those in other parties and independents that a Libertarian governor would be beneficial to Iowans over the next 4 years? And Marco, you can answer your own question after that if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to work, across party lines, work with all Iowans, ultimately. We may not always agree on the issues. We may not always agree on we hopefully agree on the issue. We may not always agree with the solutions to those issues. But we can do that. You do that by being a kind person, by being a decent person, not by just being antagonistic or confrontational with everyone that disagrees with you. You go to the forums, even when someone disagrees with you. You go to those events that you have, and you have a message that really resonates with everyone. This is a message that I'm bringing to the people of Iowa that does resonate with most everyone, I think. Whether it be medical cannabis for sick children, whether it be medical choice for people that are sick and die. That's something that resonates with everyone. No one likes to pay more money in taxes, especially when it's going to something that to big government, big corporations. Big corporations may like it, but the average Iowan doesn't like it. That's something of a message that almost everyone agrees with. People want to be free. We just have to give them that option. We've got to show them that we are a credible choice and that the Democrats and Republicans, they know how bad they've messed up. Everyone knows how bad they've messed up. We can look around to see how bad they've messed up. We just got to show them that we have plans and a solution and we're going to work with everyone and that we can get this done. So I would definitely go across there and continue to speak across Iowa to every group of people that are willing to listen to me speak.
One thing you're not going to see from a libertarian governor, at least no one that's ran yet in our state, is do I foresee this problem. Things like Governor Reynolds recently getting in trouble for, people getting critical about her having donors that have worked against the 9/11 families being able to sue certain parties in Saudi Arabia that took part in the events of 9/11. And I think, why is an Iowa governor even connected to this sort of thing? It's ridiculous to me that we have this kind of system where an Iowa governor even gets a chance to be involved in something like that. You're not going to have that from our party. You're not going to have these conflicting people that we're going to appoint to, things like a various board that's going to decide whether eminent domain proposed is fair and whether compensation to landowners is just. We're not going to say, take money from the people that are proposing a project and then appoint this crony group of people to a board that have one opinion on eminent domain that lean much more towards the government side of things than the property owner. And we just don't have these sorts of conflicts of interest. We might agree with Democrats and Republicans on some issues, but we don't have people, throwing money at us trying to get us to stack the deck in their favor.
Here's a question from Jake to Marco. How would you plan to keep major party status?
What I have been doing recently is traveling around to every part of the state I can and encouraging candidates to run for open positions from the Libertarian Party. And I think the more candidates we can get running all over the state, I think the ideas are there, the ideas are good, and it's the right time and place for libertarian government. And if we can get a choice in every county, every time people go and vote, there's a libertarian there that they know. It's better when it's someone that they work with, that's their neighbor. And just giving them that choice is going to make a lot of people take that choice. I think that we show a steady growth, and we're not going to compromise that by taking funds from big crony capitalists. We're going to keep doing what we're doing, keep educating people, keep getting people to run that are your neighbors and everyday Iowans, as opposed to some guy that, one of our kids or someone that we're friends with, that we went to school with, that we think would make the Iowa that we want to see. We want them to be independent-minded and, talk about the issues from their county. And I think we easily keep major party status and we keep growing, and pretty soon you're going to have 3 parties and then maybe a 4th party that have a lot more equal numbers than what we see right now.
Keeping major party status is critical. It has brought us so much more exposure, so much more attention, we cannot afford to let it go. It's going to take, I estimate, about 25,000 votes to keep major party status in the next election. 2 times I've run for Secretary of State, I've received over 33,000 votes. One was in the most recent one, had 4 people in the race. That's about what I expect this time. We have a few more. I don't see keeping major party status, I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. in my campaign, because we've got the list of people that we need to target. We're doing the Facebook advertisements, we will do the Google advertisements, YouTube advertisements, TV, radio if we need to. We will go door to door. It's all about really organization. How can we organize, how can we put the volunteers in place that we need across the state of Iowa to bring these people out to vote. So I'm aiming for much more than the 25,000 votes. I definitely think that we will receive that. I'm going to do my best to win this election, but short of that, we will keep major party status. So I've done, I'm going to continue to do the amount of media interviews that I've done. I've done appearances on KGAN TV out of Cedar Rapids. Been mentioned a few times in the Des Moines Register. Mentioned several times in the Cedar Rapids Gazette, Quad City Times, Cedar Falls, Waterloo. So probably more media coverage than any other candidate for governor has ever had. I've already got in this race this early on. We're still a year away from, almost a year, 11 months away from the election date. So we're going to keep doing that. We're going to organize people. We've got a bigger volunteer list than what any other candidate has had at the end of their election. We're just going to use those people, make sure they're in the right place. And as Marco says, we're also recruiting candidates. That's an important thing to get other people running. This isn't about one person. This is about a team of people that present an idea, present a set of values to the people of Iowa, and eventually start to implement some change in our political system we have.
Here's a question from Marco to Jake. If you were to become the next governor, how do you foresee your use of the line item veto?
We would have to increase our budget for PINs. That's what I definitely think. One of the things the governor does is they go through and they set a recommended budget. That recommended budget is, if you, not even going into the sub-details of each department, just out of everything in there is 1,043 pages, I think it is. You can go through that list, and then you go through the sub-details. This is a time-consuming thing, right? And then you find out things that are in there that you're quite for certain what does, whether it be like an egg council board that charges a 5-cent tax on every time you buy eggs, a carton of eggs. There's things like that hidden in there. You read it, you're not like, what does this do? What does this promotion board do? What does this thing hidden in education do? And you find out it has nothing to do with education. You go through, you submit your budget, the legislature fights with you, they send it back, and you can veto, you can also negotiate with the legislature. So yeah, you're gonna have to give up certain things. You're not gonna get everything you want. That's part of our political process. Anyone that tells you they're gonna run it like a dictator is lying. A lot of people thought Terry Branstad was a dictator, but even his power was pretty limited when it came to the legislature. You cannot run the thing like a dictatorship, but you can negotiate and you can point out and use the bully pulpit whenever the state is doing something wrong. And you can go through and use the vetoes as much as possible.
There's a lot of powers of governance that libertarians are not too fond of. Lots of things a president or a governor can do right now that we don't want them to be able to do. And your best line of defense against that is by putting a libertarian in as governor. We're not going to abuse the power that we have because we simply don't believe in it. We wouldn't elect the next libertarian governor if we went against the core principles of our party. And the line item veto, there's examples of governors that have used this. One is a governor who's governor for multiple terms, and his state's not falling apart. They rather liked him, I think, and he helped us get major party status. That was Gary Johnson. He used the line item veto very efficiently, I believe, and really, if you see this bill, Democrats, Republicans are fighting back and forth, and they keep adding all these things to a bill that might be about mental health, but they get all this extra language in there, try to sneak something in there because they know Iowans want this issue addressed. You can use the line item veto to basically say, this is what the citizens wanted, and this is what you guys put into this legislation. And you can rectify that situation and really be a defender of a lean and ethical government as opposed to one that's going to say they're helping the citizenry on one issue while they're patting their pockets on 3 or 4 other issues at the same time.
Here's a question from Jake to Marco. What are your future plans personally within the Libertarian Party?
I started off just getting signatures for candidates, started off helping other people run. I didn't have this big goal of one day running for office, one day running for governor. I plan to really go back to doing that after this race. I can't imagine in my lifetime any other party coming to our status that I fit more in line with. And actually, I like to think it was the other way around. I fit this party's platform as an individual before I even knew that it existed. So you'll just see me going back to helping candidates that I believe in and helping people get signatures. I could see myself going back into the press and kind of going along this path of actually presenting news stories that are happening in Iowa as opposed to trying to get revenue by making people fight over some left versus right issue. So basically, I could see myself going back into a more liberty-minded press. I definitely will go back to helping candidates that I believe in.
Well, I've been here since I'm 16 years old. I'm going to stay a libertarian until the day I die. So I'm here to stay, whether it be running for office again, I don't know. Hopefully I'm running for re-election next time after this, so that will already be decided for me. Supposing that doesn't happen though, I will definitely remain active within the party. I will continue to recruit candidates. I will continue to help out county parties. I'll continue to give speeches. I'll continue to write op-eds. So I'm not going anywhere, that's for sure. I didn't dream of, whenever I first got involved at the age of 16, of running for governor. That even a couple of years ago I didn't dream of running for governor. It just so happened that opportunities presented themselves and I was in this position that I thought that I could be of benefit to the Libertarian Party and also of getting our libertarian ideas out there to a wide audience that I decided to run. So that's not going to change. Maybe I will run for office again. But there's so many different ways. I would hope that we've recruited enough candidates that way you find better candidates than me to run for these offices. That in the future that we keep bringing more people in, and that we actually change the direction of the state. And I'll continue to fight against bad laws whenever they arise, as they so often do.
Thank you, Jake. Now, this last question will be posed directly from candidate to candidate. And so, Marco, why don't you tackle this first one and the rest of it to Jake?
Sure. Jake Porter. Historically, Iowa candidates that were not the leading Democrat or Republican were largely ignored in the polls and by the press. How do you plan to get your platform heard by the most Iowans over the next election cycle?
I think I'm going to continue to do what we've done. I think we've had a lot of success with it, and that is there's a lot of new things that we've got out there and we're testing out. We can advertise and target people specifically that are very likely to vote for us. That will help us in the polls get included in these debates. I'm also going to reach out to my opponents. I've debated them twice now. I'm about to debate a third time in Marco will here soon. Our major party opponents, been in forums with them. We're going to use that to show people that we should be there. And if they don't let us in, we're going to raise hell about it, right?
You bet.
We will, yes. They will let us in because the amount of publicity we get if they don't let us in will definitely keep that major party status. So they're going to be afraid not to let us in, and then they do let us in, and we're going to beat them in the debates. So there's just no way they can win this. We're going to keep doing it, though, by getting media coverage wherever we can. We're going to use new technology, whether it be Facebook, Spotify ads, YouTube ads, whatever, Tinder ads, I don't know, whatever the young people are using, we're going to do it. And we're going to do even traditional, direct mail, door knocking, phone banking, whatever we can, we're going to hit them on multiple fronts. We're going to make sure we get in the debates. We're going to make sure that the polls include us.
Sure, I'll address my own question there. I guess that makes it easier.
Only if you're talking third person, Roll style.
I really don't think the other parties running TV commercials, the other parties have lost their way from the classical liberal to the conservative Republican that, initially wanted to abolish slavery instead of put more people into slavery. I think them trying to touch on these out-of-touch issues like what bathroom someone's going to use, they're probably going to run commercials about that. Commercials that they pay a lot of money for, they throw a lot of money down the toilet. People are watching their favorite shows on apps that don't have very many commercials, least of all commercials from local politicians, state politicians. People turn those off. I grew up seeing political commercials way too often, and I turn them off when I see them. So we're gonna get the attention from actually going and talking to people in small cities, in large cities. A city where there's a couple hundred people, we'll go and talk to them, and that's going to be better than paying money that we're going to have to try to earn back by compromising our positions, or that's what the other parties would do. And I think using social media, we can reach more people than an old-fashioned political ad is going to reach. I'm not saying we won't do any of those, but if we do, they're going to talk about the issues. They're not going to, we're not going to start this invented feud or something like that. I really think that's how you do it. You actually go and let people ask you questions and let them tell you. It's a novel idea. Let them tell you what's going on in their city, in their town, their county. And that's going to be more effective. These people we already have it every time I go to a new spot. Then you get them telling their neighbors, them telling 10 other people. By the time we get to the primary, they're going to tell hundreds, thousands of people about the option. And that's going to be much more effective than running a TV ad and spending a bunch of money for an ad that no one sees.
Good question, Marco. The next question is from Jake to Marco.
Marco, if you win the Libertarian primary, if you beat me, how do you plan to get media coverage and ensure participation in the general election debates?
I think for going on a century, people in this party have faced uphill fights, they've faced ridicule, they've faced slander and libel from the other parties, and they got away with it because we didn't have the same kind of money behind us back then. And I think it's inevitable. I think we're snowballing to the point where they're not going to be able to ignore us. They invite the beginning of December 5th in Des Moines, we're going to be in a forum with everyone recognized by the Secretary of State that's running for governor, and they're not going to be able to ignore us any longer. We've had more and more credible candidates running locally, running at the state level, running at the federal level, and I think all you do is keep presenting good ideas, and it's inevitable at this point.
How many votes is it going to take to win the governor race?
That just depends. We're talking about, a three-way race, you'd be talking around 350,000, somewhere in there, depending on how, you
So
split
we're
it
going
up
to
different
probably
ways.
get about 15 times as much recognition, name recognition like this as what we've got so far.
What's going to be interesting right here, right now, is you have, they weren't sure people would step up and challenge Reynolds, and there's still 3 people that are doing so, I believe. 2 or 3 challengers. That was kind of a curveball for the Republican Party. They'd rather just pass the torch nice and simple to the protege of the Brand's dad. And then the Democratic Party, you have a lot of infighting just in that party between the establishment and the more progressive element. And there's 7 or 8 people still in that race. So I would say we have already better name recognition than half the people that are running for governor right now.
Awesome.
And you have, a wealthy insurance CEO that is the likely front runner for the Democratic Party. He's got, streets and buildings named after him, so he should have the name recognition advantage right now. But I don't think that's going to appeal to Democrats or Republicans. Some guy that his company took advantage of Glass-Steagall being repealed, and a Democrat actually did that, so that's, ironic.
What being reviewed?
It was Glass-Steagall legislation because he was CEO of an insurance company that combined if you go up the ladder, they combine investment banking with insurance sales, and that was something companies couldn't do prior to that being repealed. And to me, it's a conflict of interest running on his party's platform and being, becoming a millionaire off that sort of thing. But yeah, I really think there's going to be a lot of infighting, a lot of people split in those parties, and that's going to play to our advantage this time around. In the future, it could be that could go back to being the case where there's two guys or two women that are standing out above the pack, but we really don't have that right now.
Jake, why don't you go ahead and answer your own
Okay,
question?
so we've got media coverage. We continue to get media coverage. As long as we have an interesting story and run an interesting campaign and reach a lot of people, the media will continue to cover us. The people are tired of the Democrats and Republicans. They want a new story. The Democrats and Republicans are boring. At least we're entertaining, right? So, they may even make up lies about us. They may call us doped up loonies or something like that on the radio program that's happened. They may but the fact is they're going to give us coverage. People are going to take it serious. They are taking it serious. And we're just going to keep going for this until they let us in the debates. And like I said before, if they don't let us in the debates, we get even more media coverage from it. So there's just no way we're going to lose, and I don't think there's any way they're not going to let us in those debates because of that. They don't want the bad publicity. They don't want me, making fun of them, or Marco making fun of them. So I don't think they're going to do that again.
Now we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. I don't have any signed written ones to review, so we're just going to kind of open it up. We're going to kind of spread it around. John's already had a couple questions. We'll kind of rotate that. So any questions from the audience?
If you want, there was an online question I saw that we didn't cover. I don't know.
Go ahead and pose it.
Sure. It was talking about what, if anything, should the government do in regards to soil and water conservation, the nitrate issue, things of that nature. And if you want, I can go on that, or you can go
ahead. I might want to steal your answer.
I don't know. That was one you saw, right? That popped up on there. So I think we just missed it or something. But I think we move away from subsidizing, giving welfare to big companies from outside the state, big monoculture subsidies, and we move away from the renewable fuel standard. We move away from the failed experiment with ethanol, where most of our monoculture goes to. And really, we're right now encouraging people to treat family farmers like low-level employees when they used to run the show of their own land. And I don't think, go out there and talk to a family that's farming right now and see if they really think that the Farm Bill has had their best interests in mind. See if they think that continued monoculture is the path that they see to a bright future.
What is this monoculture you're talking about?
That is when you have acres and acres of just corn, just soybeans. When the government props up one crop and says, okay, farmers that farm grasses or wheat or aronia berries or hemp, once we both agree that that needs to come back as an option in Iowa, you don't say, okay, these farmers, they got to fend for themselves, but the ones that
grow this corn that ties us to the federal government via the ethanol mandate. We're gonna help them, and I think helping would not be the right word to use, because I think they'll tell you that they feel used and abused by the government, trying to, you know, mess with their prices and just give them more loans. And we've lost so many family farms, and so many people have lost their land by continuing this trend. I think we need to hit the brakes and reverse right away. And I also think that, you know, people are going to say, what about the farmers? Why can't we subsidize them if we're subsidizing everything else? I think that's possible. I think you tie subsidies to things like quotas for water and soil conservation, and you say, if you're not meeting these, you don't get the state help. And I really think that tying that into tax reform is another thing that could work. Encouraging farmers to actually grow perennials and things that are better for the water and soil. And really, if you do something like comprehensive tax reform, and you say we're going to work to end the income tax in 4 years, or, you know, down the road set a goal, and we're going to lower property taxes, but in return we're going to give so much of our sales tax to water and soil conservation, to mental health funding. I think that's how we get address some current issues and work towards a leaner, more efficient government while doing it.
Yeah, part of the proposals that I came across that Ron Corbett, who's running against Kim Reynolds in the Republican primary, was to raise the sales tax. I forget what, I don't even know how he figures up his numbers, whatever amount to solve this issue. The money already exists if you want to take it out of the Department of Agriculture, the Secretary of State's office. You can maneuver things around and you can pay for it that way, and you just put it in the general budget if you're going to spend money. We don't need a new tax, we don't need a separate tax. The money's already in the general fund, and you can take from the general fund. Now, one thing that we do is we talk a little bit about subsidies here. So a lot of, not really subsidies so much in the ethanol right now, there's the mandates. I think that personally what we should do is they do have a point. The government, the federal government, does subsidize big oil. We should end all subsidies, all mandates, level the playing field, and we would be able to compete. So we should not have, you know, one market, would be oil companies, should not get subsidies, should not get tax breaks or anything else that the farmers here do not. And then we just let the market decide on these things, but we have to take it away from everyone. We can't just take it away from Iowans. We don't just take it away from the oil companies, we take it away from everyone. We see what the market allows when it comes to this. And as far as, you know, tying subsidies that you're going to do this, I don't like the idea of, you know, the government tying, you know, we'll give you a tax break if you do what we want. That's the same thing the federal government does with right now when they want, like alcohol laws, for example, how you're going to enforce them. They hold the strings, right? That if you don't do exactly and pass the laws that we want, we're going to cut your highway funding. So things like that, we got to be very careful to allow the government to do. They'll end up promoting their favorite business, their crony business partner over the other businesses out there. And I think we got to be very careful to watch that happen.
In the absence of other questions from the audience, Marco has discussed an issue. Jake, do you have any other issue that you'd like to discuss before we wrap up here?
I have a question, actually.
Go ahead.
So historically, Iowa hasn't really had any emissions testing, right? Where I'm from, there's emissions testing. Would that ever be implemented into Iowa state law for the environment?
Why don't you start on that?
Certainly possible. I'm not aware of, you know, any current laws. It's certainly possible that would happen. It's also certainly possible that private individuals, private organizations would come up with that as well. As far as any laws, I don't know of any. I would certainly think it would be possible for it to happen.
I think from going around talking to people in business currently working with the land and running these sorts of operations that might actually run afoul of some sort of limit in that regard, I really think creating a system that's fair to a guy living in rural Iowa, a woman starting a farm in rural Iowa, whatever we have, and I think making the system more balanced towards them versus some big agricultural corporation that has built wealth over hundreds of years of crony policies. Just moving, in my discussions, a farmer that is less dependent on the government is a better steward of the land. I mean, they're gonna want to have this property that they pass on to their children if they want it, that they pass on to a family member. We used to have this history of the family farm. My dad grew up on one in Minnesota, and we really have less and less of that with these types of factory farming that we subsidize. So I think you basically let the market take over. You give people more agricultural freedom, and you're not going to need to tell people not to pollute. That's going to be handled through civil court, I believe. You can't just use some kind of pesticide that's going to destroy your neighbor's crop. You can't just let your swine nitrates go off into the stream. And now we have the technology to test where that's coming from, and a farmer, if they can't talk to their neighbor and work with them on those issues, there's going to be a lot of lawsuits, and it's going to happen more. We're going to see it more and more, and I think the civil system is going to address that as opposed to putting sorts of caps on what farmers can and can't do.
Are there any more questions from the audience? Jocelyn?
If you would, how would you transition from public education into a market-based education?
Start with one.
I think that it's happening, maybe slowly, more slowly than a lot of us would like. A big argument as to why we need these public schools is to keep kids safe, is what they say, or to have this uniform education. And I really, myself, don't see those two, there's more fear-mongering to that than anything. I don't think there's any evidence to show that homeschool kids are more at risk to abuse. If anything, they're going to be more at risk to maybe failing the pop culture quiz. They might not know, who Taylor Swift is or something like that. They might not have a kid that has a locker next to them that's selling every drug that Reagan and Nixon told us that was bad for us. Because that's what I had growing up in school, in public school. And you have these police officers coming to your class and telling you, dare, just say no. And then you got kids that are selling drugs down the hall. So the idea that we're protecting kids through public school is pretty absurd to me. I mean, I saw more violent things there than I saw visiting my friends that homeschool. And I think because people see that every day, there's more interest in homeschooling now than there ever has been. I think it's something like 2% of eligible kids that are school age homeschool right now. So why is the government so concerned in letting a few families have the freedom to do that sort of thing when the kids that they are educating are going downhill in terms of testing, and they're just throwing more and more money at it? So to me, the homeschooling is actually a bright spot on the map, that more people are interested in that. And I think that's the trend. I don't know that we really have to do anything short of, I think we can encourage homeschooling and improve the people that want to use public schooling at the same time. I think it's a very bad thing to say we're pitting homeschoolers versus public education. If you want people to turn away from homeschooling, you think that's a problem, then look at what we're doing. We don't need to spend more money to improve, because we keep throwing money at the problem in terms of public education, and things seem to be going in the wrong direction.
One example is in New Hampshire. I'll bring that up again. They have no income tax, and their education is world-renowned. One of the best places you could go to a public school on the planet. So I think a leaner, more private world as opposed to more public education is going to be a really positive thing.
One thing I can address really quick about education. So we got to look at a few factors. Yeah, let's make it easier. Let's cut any unnecessary regulations on homeschoolers. Let's cut any unnecessary regulations on private schools. Let the market decide. Now, of course, we've got a few, Iowa, largely rural, so we've got a few factors that we can't ignore. You're probably not going to see a dozen, schools show up in Decatur County, for example. That's probably not going to happen. It's not going to happen in Red Oak. That's okay. You can open this up. You can make sure that people are allowed to open enroll in whatever district they want to. Whatever schools work best, those are the ones that will thrive. The market will sort the problems out. So it's just like retail. I've worked in retail many years, retail management. Retail works very well. They come up with new innovative ideas all the time. They're constantly finding better ways to get the product to the consumer. They're doing it because of competition. If somebody really is poor, look at what's happening to all these retail stores that have done a very poor job. They're going out of business. And what's happening? Your prices have gone down. You've got more products than ever before. Everything is better because of it. The economy grows because of it. Inflation goes down because of it. Same way with education. If you provide more options, ultimately what will happen, it's going to take a while, ultimately what will happen, homeschool, private school, whatever, costs will go down dramatically, and test scores, whatever you're measuring it by, the intelligence of the student, that's all going to go up. The safety of the students is all going to go up because people are not going to send their children to a school that's not safe, to a school that doesn't educate, to a school that doesn't prepare them for the future. And so we need to stop all this nonsense of attacking homeschool parents, for example, attacking good people. That should not happen. We need to make sure that everyone has the resources at an education in Iowa, and we'll do that through letting the market decide.
Okay,
I know in Iowa, there's been small towns where it's been hostile to businesses going to the town. I know 10 years ago, Walmart Bass Pro, Walmart wanted to put a rail house in Missouri Valley. Walmart wanted to put the store in Missouri Valley before the city council closed. And there has been a city council member on the Missouri Valley Board basically scaling away businesses. How do you encourage small towns to invite business and not scare them away?
As governor, unfortunately, it's very little. You've got to be honest occasionally and say, as governor, a lot of candidates will get up and say they'll make promises of all the stuff they can do. It's going to sunshine every day. I think that's what Kim Reynolds said, right? It's a bright new day. And as Moody Blues said, the sunshine we've been waiting for will turn to rain, right? Governor cannot, unfortunately, force a small town to do something, even if it's in their own economic interest. What will eventually happen, though, is the towns that do bring in business will survive, they will thrive. Other people will eventually adopt those ideas. They will have to, they will either do that, or unfortunately, they will wither up and die. That's just the way it is. But as governor, I can't go in there and tell this town, this is what you're going to do. The governor isn't a dictator, doesn't have that sort of authority. But we can encourage businesses, for example, to come over from other states. And we do that by keeping a fair market. And I say fair market, that means we don't give something to your competitor that keeps you away, that we don't benefit one business over another. We don't say, we like this business, so you guys cannot come in. We don't do that as a state. There's plenty of things to do with, like within the Iowa Department of Economic bribery, as I like to call it. No, okay, they call it development, I'm sorry. No, what they do is they basically bribe corporations to come in here. And it's funny what they do with this. So they bribe a corporation and they say, well, we'll come in here, we're not going to pay taxes for 20 years. Small businesses are going to pay the taxes, we're not going to pay it. Puts them at an unfair advantage, right? Then it comes time for the say 20 years are up, and they say, you know what, we are going to leave if we don't get our tax break extended. You know what? But don't let the door hit you on the way out to Illinois. Where else are you going to go? Iowa's a great place for it. And if so, we will replace them with new small businesses forming up, other businesses coming in, because they want this opportunity that we've got right here in the state.
I've heard a lot of people have brought me similar concerns. And I think what we can do is foster this environment of sound money and minimal taxation that will encourage people to start their own business. I've had multiple friends, I've started my own business, and it's really hard to do right now in Iowa to make it past a couple of years. And I think that if you look at the cities and towns that are actually growing in population right now in Iowa, they're doing that by starting innovative businesses. They're not doing that by bringing in, a new, multinational company, bring in a fertilizer plant or bring in a new Walmart necessarily. I don't think we should have any policies that force them not to do that or that work against that. But I think going back to that idea of we already have this money we're spending to train Iowans to do jobs, let's spend them to keep those jobs in some place like Fairfield that's growing their population. And they're going to very soon, a lot of people think they're doing things right in government. They're doing positive things for business, but very soon they're going to run into actually needing employees. They're not going to have enough labor. And if we can actually use the money we're already using to train Iowans to fill jobs that they're going to actually do in Iowa, I think that's a win-win situation and helps work against this kind of idea that we don't want, new business ideas. We don't want a different skill set for our workers and that sort of thing.
We've got time for one more question. Any burning questions out there?
This man had a question for Law, actually.
John?
Okay, I wanted to touch on something that neither one of you've touched on in your talk so far, and that is school vouchers. School vouchers are where the funds follow the student, not the school, and they benefit not only private schools, but homeschoolers that way. And I think that would be an elegant solution to give private schools and homeschoolers an equal footing where they can actually compete on a level playing field. And not only that, but fertilizers that are, commercial chemical fertilizers are the biggest reason for
Let's
nitrate.
focus on one question.
Okay.
And put it in the form of a question.
Okay. What would you do if you were successful when you were running for governor to switch us over to a school vouchers system?
Mark?
I think right now the threat is more to, I think Republicans in Iowa right now are warm to school vouchers. I think the legislation, if not there already, is going to be and perhaps get to, if not to our desk, near to our desk through the powers of government, perhaps in the next 4 years. And I think you can do that by creating this environment that, if we're going to subsidize education, why should we not give people that option? I personally don't have a problem with it. If the legislature can get that to my desk, I'm going to be a fan of letting people have that decision.
Yeah, when I talked about market competition, that's one thing that definitely I was in favor of. Another thing also that we could look at doing is tax credits as well. So if you're spending money to send your kid to a private school, if there's any incurred cost that you have, that you get money off your taxes, the same way with homeschooling, making sure we continue that, making sure we don't take that away from anyone. That's going to be some of the biggest things. Vouchers as well, that's another possibility. But any way to increase competition, whether it be, like I said, allowing open enrollment in any district of your choice. Of course, there's limits. Somebody's not going to fly their kid across the state to go to another school, but within the area, the people will do, and the schools that do best will ultimately benefit and survive, and the ones that do poor will either have to change or they will go out of business and something will replace them.
We've about reached the end of the debate, and it's time for the candidates to summarize why they would be a good Iowa governor. So Jake, you want to lead off?
There's two things to consider. One is who we want to be the Libertarian nominee, who we want to represent the Libertarian Party. That's the first thing we have to consider. Why would I be the best Libertarian nominee, in my opinion? Marco may disagree. Now, I think that I've got the media coverage, I've got the name recognition, I've ran for office before, I know what to do, what not to do. I know how to get the media coverage, I've done that, I've proven that I can. I've got more media coverage, I think, than anyone that's ran for Iowa governor in the past as Libertarian has ever got. That is critical. It's also critical to know how to run an organization, how to run a business. These are skills, how to market to the population. That way we can make sure we get or we maintain that major party status, and that we get the necessary votes that we've got for that, as well as attempting to win the election as best we can. So that's a key thing. The second part of it is, why would I be a great governor? Because I'm the only ones actually talking about, and Marco is too, I won't throw him under the bus here, but Libertarians are the only ones that are actually talking about the real issues. So when we look at what problems the state is having, the Democrats, they'll talk about some of the issues, but they'll leave out the other parts. They're leaving out, actual cutting things in the budget. They just, I don't know where they think they're going to get the money from, right? They say, well, we've got budget problems, we've got crises, but we've got some real problems there. And they continue to take our civil liberties away, as we've seen. They don't care about them. That's something that I would address. Restoring the voting rights to anyone that has paid for their time, or paid for their crime and served their time. That's important. So there's so many things that we have to do. Listening to all Iowans, not acting unhinged, and not calling other people unhinged. Making sure we make friends in this and bringing more people into the party.
Thank you, Jake. Marco, your summary of why you'd like to be governor of Iowa. Sure.
I have worked within the ranks of both major parties before they gave us an opportunity to participate. And I think I have positive relationships with some people in both parties, and I've seen them shut out the candidates that I supported, change rules to keep the candidates that I supported going into positions of power within the party. So I think I can rely on that to have a positive relation with both sides and kind of get us beyond this left versus right and looking at it more as liberty versus tyranny. And I really think my platform speaks to what a lot of Iowans are needing right now, and some are suffering. Medical freedom, agricultural freedom, and economic freedom. And I go into that in depth on my website. And I also am writing a book about how we get these ideas addressed in the next 4 years, the next 8 years, and so on. And I really think my platform is appealing to rural Iowans as well as city Iowans. I was raised in Des Moines, but I have family in rural Iowa. I have friends in rural Iowa. I live on an acreage right outside the zoo, so walk a couple blocks one way and it gets pretty rural pretty quick. So I think I see a lot of overlap between what these people are telling me that's going on, be it in the city or the rural Iowans. And I think that my platform is also going to appeal to the wealthier Iowans as well as to Iowans that are living paycheck to paycheck or worse. It's not. It's moving beyond these battles of left versus right, of rich versus poor, of race versus race, whatever. It's giving every citizen the same liberty and the same freedom. Our platform doesn't work at all if we don't apply that across the board, and that's what our platform strives to do.
Thank you, Jake and Marco, for participating in this historic debate and dedicating yourself to running for governor. Thank you to the entire audience for coming out here to support the Libertarian cause and witness Iowa history in the making. I invite you to stick around and meet and greet with Jake and Marco and congratulate them on their excellent performance. And Let's give Marco and Jake a standing ovation.
I'm going to say a special thanks right here to this guy who has moderated this, the first Libertarian Party of Iowa gubernatorial primary debate. We thank you very much for doing that. It's a great honor to have you here, being able to do this. So thank you on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Jake.
Shake again there, let me get a picture of it, right there.
Hey, hold on.
Straight now.
Yeah, it was real for a second.
Oh, yeah, I'm just flags, hang on. You like flags?
Oh, that flag has fringes on it.
That's fringes on it. It's not that morality board.
Oh, it's.
Why would they put that in here?